to Nolan Knows. Let's take a look at the news. The University of Oklahoma has cut ties with a fraternity after a racial video surfaced. It went viral. I can understand where the university would want to distance themselves from that. It's pretty ugly. Ashton Kutcher wants diaper changing tables in men's rooms. I don't know what the ratio of men changing diapers to women changing diapers is, but if it's small enough, it's never going to happen. Tylenol maker Johnson & Johnson has been ordered to pay $25 million for selling metal-contaminated drugs. Well, I'm not sure if that's an indictment of the Food and Drug Administration not catching it. A civilian actually caught it and reported it, but at least they're going to stop. An ex-jail guard fatally shot a man in a Brooklyn subway scuffle. I read the whole story. It's a bit complicated, and I'm not sure how it's really going to shake down. But he was accosted by two young guys, and it actually turned into a scuffle on the subway car. He pulled a gun. He didn't shoot at that point, but subsequently followed these kids, got into another scuffle, and one of them got shot. We'll just have to wait and see when all the details are in whether it was a clean shoot or not. A teenager was convicted after spending $30,000 mistakenly deposited into his checking account. He's 18 years old. I'm assuming that he's living at home, and I'm wondering if his parents noticed that new BMW in the driveway and perhaps could have asked him where he got the money to buy it from. In any case, he is going to be on probation for about a decade and has to pay the money back. A story going viral is a model out in California who's 8.5 months pregnant and still has abs. She's got the tiniest little baby bump. You probably wouldn't even know that she was pregnant. I imagine that every pregnant woman in the world hates her, but she really did stay in good shape, and I understand it's good for her health and the babies. HBO is now going to stream on Apple devices. Apple's ingenuity never ceases to amaze me. Fewer and fewer young people are watching television, and more of them are relying on electronic devices like the iPad and the iPhone. It's a remarkable time that we live in. This photograph that you're looking at of an infant wrapped in a flag somehow has caused a big flap. I don't get it. I think it's one of the most beautiful and patriotic pictures I have ever seen. Well, apparently Mattel has come up with a new Barbie doll, and some say it's creepy because the doll actually talks. Well, there's some vulnerabilities here. The doll uses Wi-Fi to communicate with the Mattel cloud. The doll is asked a question or a conversation is started, and the computer up in the cloud manages to find the right response. I'm sure it's fascinating for kids. I don't know how creepy it is, but, telling them not to sell it or advertise it is wrong. The marketplace will decide if it works. The story of the week this week is a letter written by the Republicans ostensibly to Iran. The point of this letter that was written by Republican senators and given to Iran was to point out that if they cut a deal with the administration, then the next president coming in can just as easily ignore the deal if the Republicans or the U.S. Senate or that president don't like it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, listen. I'll tell you what the Republicans did. They undercut the president. Now, I'm not a fan of this president. I can think of very few things he's done well. But the fact is he's dealing with the Iranians, and you don't know whether it's going to be a good deal or a bad deal. You may think it's going to be a bad deal, but the point of this letter to explain the Constitution of the United States to the Iranians with regard to this deal is absolute nonsense. All it does is cut the feet out from under the president. The Iranians know what our Constitution is. They know what happens if they sign a deal and it doesn't go through the U.S. Senate and it's not a ratified treaty. They didn't need this information. They might have been able to send this letter to, say, the President of the United States to make their point. But when it comes to dealing in foreign policy, I think the United States Senate ought to sit back. Congress ought to just wait and see what the deal is. I don't think this was a good move for them politically either. I think if the deal falls through with the Iranians, then the administration will simply blame the Republicans for this saber rattling. They made a mistake both politically and internationally, and they frankly shouldn't have done it. We'll have to wait just a little bit longer to find out if there are any real ramifications, but it was in fact a mistake, and that's the story of the week. After the fact this week is a conversation with Michael Barone. His political perspicacity is second to none. He is an author, columnist, and commentator. And we talked about a couple of topics this week, the first of which has to do with the Supreme Court case King v. Burwell. His observations were keen, and I don't think I'd heard anybody else say exactly the way he did what he did about the Supreme Court case. Here it is.
So I think there's a very good chance that this interpretation by the IRS, which the IRS, by the way, provided almost no written justification for, contrary to the usual practice in federal agencies, will be overturned, and the court will rule that the English language is what it is, says, and in this case, it says what it says.
The argument over the word state is what's all important in King v. Burwell. The administration wants you to believe the word state refers to both the 50 states and the federal government. But if that were the case, there would be no incentive for any of the 50 states to set up their own exchanges. We went on to talk about Hillary Clinton and the email scandal because that came up too.
And she tells us there's no security problems. I think what we learned from this is that Hillary Clinton cared a lot more about being able to conceal information from the American people than she cared about protecting information from foreign hackers. And I think that that's a negative.
We went on to discuss the feeling of Hillary Clinton and how it brought back this sentiment from the 90s that I'd experienced years ago.
Occurred to me while I was listening to her yesterday was, it all depends on what the definition of is.
Well, you you might very well say that. The fact is that, we're being asked to trust people who have proven themselves multiple times untrustworthy in the past. That's not a winning pitch in a presidential campaign.
Michael Barone's column can be read in the Washington Examiner. The If They Were Here segment this week is Eric Holder. Eric Holder, if you were here today, I would tell you that you are to blame for 2 police officers who were gunned down in Ferguson, Missouri this week. 2 police officers who were simply trying to keep the peace were shot at by an irate community who somehow thought that all of their law enforcement were racist and out to get them. The fact is, they aren't racist, and the report that you put out that implied that they were is nonsense. You talk about 7 racist email jokes over a course of 6 years, the last one of which was in 2011. That doesn't indict the entire police department in Ferguson, Missouri, nor does it indict the prosecutor's office. We don't know why they stopped in 2011. Did a racist who was sending the emails quit? Were they told to stop? We don't know. So I don't think 7 emails between 2007 and 2014 is really an indicator of racism. You talk about how it is a racist city and a racist administration, yet there are thousands of blacks who move out of St. Louis into Ferguson, Missouri. Why would they voluntarily move into this racist pit of hell if in fact it is what they say? Or what you say. The fact is, it's not a racist town, and you can use these statistics any way you want. You can twist them and contort them all you want, but they don't make a picture of a racist city or a racist law enforcement bureau. You talk about racism. How about prosecuting those people who stood up and said under oath that this thug who stole the cigars tried to steal the policeman's gun and shoot him and charged him? How about prosecuting those people who said he had his hands up and said, "Don't shoot"? They clearly lied under oath. That's perjury. I don't see you going after them. I don't see you going after the people who are rioting and burning down businesses. But instead, you indict this entire police department. You incite a riot, and 2 police officers end up shot. If you were here, I'd say you're responsible, Mr. Holder.